Black CEO told a farmer's son to fix the car. Didn't know the boy's dad owned the land. The sleek black Mercedes sputtered to a halt on the dusty country road, steam billowing from under the hood. Marcus Washington slammed his fist against the steering wheel in frustration. The 52-year-old CEO was already running late for the most important meeting of his career. $60 million on the line, and I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere, Marcus muttered, loosening his Italian silk tie as sweat beaded on his forehead in the sweltering August heat. He stepped out of the car, designer shoes crunching on gravel, and popped the hood. A cloud of steam engulfed him, causing him to stumble backward. Marcus had no idea what he was looking at. Engines had always been mysterious machines to him, despite the 3 luxury vehicles in his garage back in Atlanta. In the distance, he spotted a young man walking along the edge of a vast cornfield. He couldn't have been more than 25, wearing mud-stained jeans and a faded t-shirt. "Hey, you there," Marcus called out, waving his arms. "I need some help with my car." The young man approached cautiously, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Afternoon, sir," the young man said politely. Marcus gestured impatiently toward the smoking engine. "Look, I don't have time for pleasantries. I'm late for a meeting that's worth more than you'll see in a lifetime. Can you fix this or not?" The young man's expression hardened slightly, but he maintained his composure. "I might be able to help. What seems to be the problem? If I knew what the problem was, I wouldn't be asking you, would I?" Marcus snapped. "Look, just fix it. I'll pay you $50. That's probably more than you make in a day around here anyway." The young man's jaw tightened. "Sir, don't sir me," Marcus interrupted. "Just fix the damn car. Isn't that what you people do out here? Fix things?" A tense silence fell between them. The young man's eyes narrowed as he studied Marcus carefully. "What did you just say to my son?" Marcus turned to see an older man approaching from the direction of a nearby farmhouse. He walked with purpose, his weathered face set in a hard expression. Though in his 60s, he moved with the strength of someone who had worked the land his entire life. "Dad, it's fine," the younger man said quietly. "No, David, it's not fine," the older man replied, his voice calm but firm. "I want to know what this man said to you." Marcus straightened his back, towering over both men in his tailored suit despite the heat. "Look, I'm just trying to get my car fixed so I can get to my meeting. I offered your boy $50, which is generous considering." "Considering what?" the older man challenged, stepping closer. "Considering we're just simple country folk who should be grateful for your charity." "I didn't say that," Marcus replied defensively. "You didn't have to," the older man said. "I recognized that look the moment you stepped out of your fancy car." Marcus felt his temper rising. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The older man's laugh was short and without humor. "Son, do you have any idea who I am, or whose land you're standing on right now?" Marcus glanced around at the vast fields stretching in every direction. "Because if you did," the older man continued, "you might think twice about how you speak to my son, the one with the engineering degree from MIT who just agreed to help you despite your attitude. But let's go back to how this all started. It was just 3 hours earlier when Marcus Washington woke in his hotel room, ready for the biggest day of his professional life. Marcus opened his eyes to the gentle chime of his alarm. The sun was just beginning to peek through the curtains of his hotel suite in downtown Atlanta. He stretched, feeling the crisp Egyptian cotton sheets against his skin. Today was the day. After 3 years of work, Horizon Technologies was finally going to secure the venture capital they needed to take the company global. As the CEO and founder of Horizon, a software company specializing in agricultural technology, Marcus had built something remarkable from nothing. The son of a high school janitor and a hospital cafeteria worker, he had clawed his way up through scholarships, student loans, and sheer determination. Now at 52, he was on the verge of cementing his legacy. "We weren't expecting you for another 20 minutes, Westbrook called out, descending the steps. "And in such interesting transportation." Marcus straightened his tie and extended his hand. "Mr. Westbrook, my car broke down a few miles from here. Mr. Wilson was kind enough to give me a ride." Westbrook froze mid-handshake. "Wilson?" He looked past Marcus to David, who was still sitting in the truck. "Not Robert Wilson's boy?" "Yes, sir," David replied, giving a small wave from the driver's seat. A slow smile spread across Westbrook's face. "Well, isn't that something? Marcus Washington and David Wilson arriving together. If that isn't a sign, I don't know what is." Marcus looked between them, confused. "I'm sorry, I don't follow." Westbrook clapped him on the shoulder. "Come inside, Marcus. I think we have a lot more to talk about than just your software company." David started to back the truck up. "I'll leave you gentlemen to your meeting. Mr. Washington, I can come back for you around 5 if that works." Westbrook waved dismissively. Nonsense, David, join us. In fact, call your father too. Tell him to come over. David hesitated, glancing at Marcus, who looked equally confused. I'm afraid I don't understand what's happening, Marcus said carefully. Westbrook laughed. Of course you don't. That's what makes this whole situation so deliciously ironic. Come inside, both of you. All will be explained. Reluctantly, David parked the truck and joined them. As they walked toward the mansion, Westbrook pulled out his phone. Dorothy, bring out the Wilsons' file from the archive room, he said to someone on the other end. Yes, the one from 1978. And set 3 more places for lunch. Inside, the mansion was a blend of historical architecture and modern luxury. They were led to a sunroom overlooking meticulously landscaped gardens. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light. Drink, Westbrook offered, moving to a well-stocked bar cart. Just water for me, Marcus replied, still trying to make sense of the situation. I prefer to keep a clear head for business discussions. David declined as well, looking increasingly uncomfortable in the opulent surroundings. Westbrook poured himself a small bourbon and settled into a leather armchair. So, Marcus, tell me about your car trouble. What exactly happened? Marcus briefly explained the breakdown and his encounter with David and Robert Wilson. And what was your first impression of the Wilsons? Westbrook asked, an odd gleam in his eye. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, aware of David sitting just a few feet away. I may have made some hasty judgments based on appearances. He thought I was a farmhand and offered me $50 to fix his car, David said bluntly. Called me you people. Westbrook burst out laughing, slapping his knee. Oh, that's priceless, absolutely priceless. Marcus felt heat rising to his face. Mr. Westbrook, I came here to discuss the investment in Horizon Technologies. I've already apologized to David for my behavior. Yes, we'll get to your software company, Westbrook said, waving his hand dismissively. But first, let me ask you, do you know why I moved our meeting from my Atlanta office to this place? You mentioned something about seeing the future of agricultural investment firsthand, Marcus replied. Precisely, Westbrook confirmed. You see, Marcus, when your proposal for Horizon Technologies crossed my desk, something about it caught my attention. Not just the impressive technology or the market projections, but your personal story, Marcus frowned. My personal story? Yes, the son of a janitor who built a tech company focused on revolutionizing agriculture. It reminded me of another story, one from about 40 years ago. A woman entered the room carrying an old file folder. She placed it on the table next to Westbrook and quietly left. Thank you, Dorothy, Westbrook called after her. He picked up the folder and opened it. In 1978, a young black man came to me with a business proposal. He wanted a loan to buy farmland, specifically 1,000 acres that was being sold by a bank after the previous owner foreclosed. Marcus glanced at David, who was watching Westbrook intently. Back then, I was just taking over my father's investment firm, Westbrook continued. Against my father's advice, I decided to take a chance on this ambitious young man. He pulled out a faded photograph and handed it to Marcus. The photo showed a much younger Richard Westbrook shaking hands with a young black man in front of a farmhouse. With a jolt, Marcus realized he was looking at a younger version of Robert Wilson. That's your father, Marcus said to David, who nodded. Robert Wilson was one of the first black farm owners in this county since Reconstruction, Westbrook explained. He faced significant resistance, shall we say, but he persevered. And you know what? He paid back that loan 5 years ahead of schedule. Today, Wilson Farms encompasses over 3,000 acres and is one of the most successful agricultural operations in the state. Marcus stared at the photograph, struggling to reconcile this information with the weathered farmer he had met by the roadside. I don't understand, he said finally. What does this have to do with my company or our investment meeting? Westbrook smiled cryptically. 2 weeks ago, I was discussing your proposal with my investment committee. We were impressed but uncertain about the practical applications of your technology in real-world farming operations. I mentioned that I knew someone who might be able to give us insight, a farmer who has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to agricultural innovation. A heavy silence fell over the room as understanding began to dawn on Marcus. You asked Robert Wilson to evaluate my company, he said slowly. Westbrook nodded. I sent him all the technical specifications and business plans. His assessment was going to be a major factor in our decision. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, remembering his condescending attitude toward Robert and David. And now I've insulted the very person whose opinion you value. Oh, it gets better, Westbrook said, clearly enjoying the situation. Tell him, David. David cleared his throat. After MIT, I worked for a few tech companies in Boston. But I came home last year when Dad was considering semi-retirement. He wanted me to gradually take over management of the farm. David has been implementing cutting-edge technology across their operation, Westbrook added, including some systems very similar to what you're developing at Horizon. The pieces suddenly fell into place in Marcus's mind. The Wilson farm is your test case for agricultural investment, he said to Westbrook. You wanted me to see it firsthand. Exactly. Westbrook exclaimed. What better way to evaluate the future of farming technology than to see it in action? Robert has agreed to give you a tour of their operation this afternoon. We were going to surprise you with it after our initial meeting. Marcus sat back in his chair, trying to process everything. The farmer he had dismissed so casually was not only a successful businessman, but also potentially instrumental to securing the investment his company needed. I've really made a mess of things, haven't I? He said quietly. The sound of a vehicle pulling up outside interrupted the conversation. Through the window, Marcus saw Robert Wilson climbing out of a mud-splattered pickup truck, even older than his son's. Dad's here, David said, standing up. Westbrook rose as well. Perfect timing, let's go greet him. As they walked toward the entrance, Marcus hung back slightly, gathering his thoughts. When Robert Wilson entered the mansion, his eyes immediately found Marcus. Mr. Washington, Robert said with a nod, I see you made it to your meeting after all. Yes, thanks to your son, Marcus replied. Westbrook stepped forward, greeting Robert warmly. Thanks for coming on such short notice, old friend. When a Westbrook calls, us common folk come running, Robert replied with a hint of irony, though there was clear affection in the exchange. I was just explaining to Marcus here about our history, Westbrook said, and about your role in evaluating Horizon Technologies. Robert's expression revealed nothing. I see. Marcus took a deep breath. Mr. Wilson, I want to apologize again for my behavior earlier. It was inexcusable. Yes, it was, Robert agreed bluntly. But you wouldn't be the first person to make assumptions based on appearances, and you probably won't be the last. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Well, Westbrook said finally, shall we move to the dining room? Lunch should be ready, and we have a lot to discuss. As they followed Westbrook deeper into the house, Marcus found himself walking beside Robert. Your son mentioned you usually deal with Mr. Westbrook directly, Marcus said quietly. How long have you known him? Since 1978, Robert replied. Back when nobody else would give me the time of day, let alone a business loan. He seems to have a great deal of respect for you, Robert nodded. Richard and I have had our differences over the years, but he's a fair man. When he says he values my opinion, he means it. They entered a formal dining room where a table was set for 5. Large windows overlooked rolling farmland in the distance. Please, sit anywhere, Westbrook instructed as servers began bringing in the first course. Marcus found himself seated between Robert and David, with Westbrook at the head of the table. The initial conversation was dominated by Westbrook, who shared stories of his and Robert's early business dealings. You should have seen the look on my father's face when I told him I was loaning money to a black farmer, Westbrook chuckled. He nearly had a heart attack, kept saying I was throwing away the family fortune. Your father never did warm up to me, Robert recalled. No, but he respected results, Westbrook replied. After you paid back that loan early and expanded your operation, even he had to admit I'd made a good investment. As the main course was served, the conversation shifted to Marcus's company. So, Marcus, Robert said, tell me about Horizon Technologies. In your own words, not the fancy proposal you sent over. Marcus put down his fork, recognizing the importance of this moment. Horizon began with a simple observation. Farming is both an art and a science, but the technological tools available weren't bridging that gap effectively. Robert nodded, encouraging him to continue. My father was a janitor at a high school in South Atlanta, Marcus explained. But he grew up on a small family farm in Georgia that was lost during the 1960s. He always talked about how farming was in his blood, even as he mopped school hallways at night. This personal detail seemed to interest Robert. What happened to the farm? Bank foreclosure, Marcus replied. Bad weather, bad luck, and according to my father, bad advice from people who were supposed to help small farmers. Robert's expression softened slightly. That happened to a lot of black farmers in those days. Yes, Marcus agreed. My father always said that with the right information and the right tools, many of those farms might have survived. That stayed with me, even as I went into technology instead of agriculture. So Horizon Technologies is what your way of helping the farmers your father couldn't save? Robert asked. The question caught Marcus off guard with its directness. I suppose there's some truth to that, though I've never quite put it that way. Robert studied him carefully. Sometimes we don't fully understand our own motivations until someone else points them out. The conversation continued through dessert, with Marcus explaining the technical aspects of Horizon's agricultural management systems. To his surprise, both Robert and David asked insightful questions that demonstrated a deep understanding of both farming and technology. "Your system's predictive modeling for crop rotation is impressive," David commented. "But have you considered integrating soil microbiome analysis?" The relationship between microbial diversity and crop health is still an emerging field. "We're actually developing that for version 2, Marcus replied, genuinely engaged in the technical discussion. "Our preliminary research suggests it could improve yield predictions by up to 15%. Robert listened to the exchange with interest. "When I started farming this land, the most advanced technology we had was a soil pH testing kit. Now my son talks about microbiomes and predictive modeling like it's second nature. The fundamentals haven't changed," David said respectfully. "You taught me that. Technology just helps us see what's already there." After lunch, Westbrook proposed that they continue their discussion at the Wilson farm. "I'd like to see your operation firsthand," Westbrook said to Robert. "And I believe Marcus would benefit from the tour as well." Robert nodded in agreement. "You're welcome to come see what we've built. My truck only seats 3, though." "I'll follow in my car," Westbrook said. "Your Mercedes isn't going anywhere until we get those parts," David reminded Marcus. "You can ride with us," Robert offered, surprising Marcus. "Unless you're worried about getting your suit dirty." There was a challenge in the older man's eyes that Marcus recognized immediately. "I'm not worried," Marcus replied, meeting Robert's gaze. "Though I might need to borrow a pair of boots if we're going to be walking the fields." A hint of approval flashed across Robert's face. "We can manage that." 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself in the back seat of Robert's truck, briefcase balanced on his lap, as they drove through the countryside. Westbrook followed behind in his Range Rover. The drive gave Marcus time to reflect on the remarkable turn his day had taken. What had begun as a straightforward investment meeting had transformed into something far more complicated and potentially more valuable. When they arrived at the Wilson farm, Marcus was struck by how different it looked from what he had imagined. The main house was a well-maintained 2-story structure with a wide front porch, surrounded by mature oak trees. Beyond it stood several modern outbuildings, including what appeared to be a large equipment barn and a recently constructed metal building with satellite dishes on the roof. "Welcome to Wilson Farms," Robert said as they parked in front of the house. "Let me get you those boots I promised." Inside, the farmhouse was a comfortable blend of traditional and modern elements. Family photos lined the walls of the entryway, showing multiple generations of the Wilson family. Robert disappeared briefly and returned with a pair of rubber boots. "These should fit well enough for a tour." As Marcus changed from his Italian leather shoes to the boots, he noticed a framed diploma on the wall, David's MIT degree in electrical engineering and computer science. Beside it hung an older diploma from Morehouse College with Robert's name. "You went to Morehouse?" Marcus asked, surprised once again. "Class of '76, Robert confirmed. "Agricultural business." "I'm Morehouse 95, Marcus said. "Computer science." Robert raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Seems we have more in common than I thought, Mr. Washington. Please call me Marcus." Robert nodded. "All right, Marcus, let's show you what a modern family farm looks like." The tour began with the metal building Marcus had noticed earlier. Inside was a sophisticated command center filled with computer equipment, large monitors displaying various data visualizations, and a conference table surrounded by chairs. "This is our farm management hub," David explained, clearly in his element. "From here, we monitor every aspect of our operation in real time." Marcus watched in amazement as David brought up displays showing soil moisture levels, weather patterns, crop health indicators, and equipment locations across the entire 3,000-acre farm. "This is impressive," Marcus admitted. "Some of these systems are similar to what we're developing at Horizon." "We've cobbled together solutions from different vendors," David explained. "Some commercial, some custom-built. The problem is integration, getting all these systems to talk to each other effectively." "That's exactly the issue Horizon is trying to solve," Marcus said eagerly. "Our platform is designed to create a unified ecosystem where all these different data streams work together seamlessly." David looked intrigued. "Show me." Without hesitation, Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out his laptop. For the next hour, he demonstrated Horizon's software platform to David, Robert, and Westbrook. What had been planned as a formal business presentation became an animated technical discussion, with David suggesting improvements and Robert offering practical insights from decades of farming experience. Your user interface is intuitive, David commented. But have you considered adding this feature for equipment maintenance tracking? And what about integration with the USDA subsidy program reporting requirements? Robert added. That's a major pain point for most farmers. Marcus found himself taking notes on their suggestions, genuinely excited about the possibilities for improving his platform. These are excellent ideas, he acknowledged. Our development team would love to get more input like this from actual users. As the afternoon progressed, they moved from the tech hub to tour the actual farmland. Robert drove them in a heavy-duty UTV to various parts of the property, explaining their crop rotation system, irrigation methods, and conservation practices. At one point, they stopped on a ridge overlooking a vast field of soybeans. In the distance, an autonomous tractor moved methodically across the land. That's one of our retrofitted tractors, David explained. We converted it to operate autonomously for certain tasks, saves labor and increases precision. Marcus watched the machine with fascination. Who did the conversion? I did, David said simply. Used some open-source software as a starting point and customized it for our specific needs. David could have stayed in Boston making six figures at a tech company, Robert said with undisguised pride. Instead, he came back to apply his knowledge here. Dad likes to brag, David said, clearly embarrassed. But the truth is, I saw more potential for innovation here than in any tech startup. Agriculture is where technology can make a real difference in feeding people and sustaining the land. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding dawning. You're right. That's actually why I started Horizon. I just lost sight of that somewhere along the way. The sun was beginning to set as they completed their tour and returned to the farmhouse. Marcus's expensive suit was now dusty and his borrowed boots were caked with mud, but he found he didn't care. On the front porch, cold drinks were waiting. They sat in rocking chairs, looking out over the farm as twilight approached. So, Richard, Robert said finally, addressing Westbrook, what do you think? Is Horizon Technologies worth your investment? Westbrook smiled. I think that decision might depend on what you and David think. After all, you'd be the ideal customers for their platform. Robert considered this. The technology is sound. With some refinements based on practical input from actual farmers, it could be valuable. I agree, David added. The integration capabilities alone would solve a lot of the problems we're facing with our current systems. Marcus held his breath, waiting for Westbrook's verdict. There's just one more thing to consider, Westbrook said thoughtfully. Marcus, what if I suggested a different structure for this investment, one that involved a partnership with Wilson Farms as a development and testing site for your technology? Marcus blinked in surprise. A partnership. Think about it, Westbrook continued. The Wilsons get early access to your integrated platform and provide real-world feedback to improve it. Horizon gets a prestigious test case to demonstrate the effectiveness of your technology to other potential customers. And Westbrook Investments reduces its risk by ensuring the product actually meets the needs of its target market, Robert added, understanding immediately. Marcus considered the proposal. That's actually brilliant. It would give us the ability to refine our platform with input from experienced farmers who understand both agriculture and technology. It would need to be a true partnership, Robert said firmly, not just us doing free testing for you. Of course, Marcus agreed quickly. We could structure it as a collaborative development agreement with equity components for both parties. David leaned forward, clearly interested. We could serve as the primary test site, but also help connect you with other farmers in our network for broader field testing. I like where this is going, Westbrook said, looking pleased. I'd be willing to back this partnership with the full $60 million you were seeking, Marcus, but on one condition. What's that? Marcus asked. You have to remember where you came from, Westbrook said seriously. Both literally as the son of a man who lost his family farm and figuratively after today's experience. Never forget what you learned here. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding the deeper meaning behind Westbrook's words. I won't. Good, Westbrook said, standing up. Then I believe we have a deal. My lawyers will draw up the paperwork. For now, though, I should head back to Atlanta. I have another meeting in the morning. As Westbrook prepared to leave, Robert turned to Marcus. What about your car? It's still broken down on the road. I can take a look at it tomorrow morning, David offered. Get those parts we need and fix it up. Shouldn't take more than a couple of hours. Thank you, Marcus said, but I'll need to get back to Atlanta tonight. I have an early meeting myself. I could drive you, David suggested. It's only about an hour and a half. Marcus hesitated. That's very generous, but I wouldn't want to impose further. It's no imposition, Robert said. But we do have another option. You could stay in our guest room tonight and head back in the morning after David fixes your car. The offer surprised Marcus. You'd let me stay in your home after how I behaved when we first met? Robert studied him thoughtfully. You know, Marcus, my father used to say that you can learn a lot about a person from how they act when things don't go their way. When your car broke down, you showed some ugly assumptions. But since then, you've demonstrated humility and a willingness to learn. That counts for something. Plus, David added with a small smile, Mom always cooks too much for dinner anyway. She'd be happy to have another person at the table. Marcus thought about his empty hotel room waiting in Atlanta, about the countless business dinners he'd eaten alone over the years, focused solely on the next deal, the next milestone. I'd be honored to accept your hospitality, he said sincerely. Later that evening, Marcus sat at the Wilson family dinner table, his tie removed and sleeves rolled up, enjoying a home-cooked meal with Robert, his wife Evelyn, and David. The conversation flowed easily, covering everything from farming techniques to mutual acquaintances at Morehouse to favorite music from the 1970s. So you were at Woodstock? Marcus asked incredulously as Robert described his college adventures. Just one of many places this respectable farmer visited in his youth, Evelyn teased, clearly having heard the stories many times. The world was changing, Robert said with a shrug. I wanted to be part of it. And now you're changing it again, Marcus observed. Not many farms are as progressive as yours. We do what's necessary to survive and thrive, Robert replied. Always have. After dinner, Marcus helped clear the table despite Evelyn's protests. As they worked together in the kitchen, he found himself sharing stories of his own childhood, memories he hadn't revisited in years. My father would have loved to see this place, Marcus said wistfully. He never got the chance to return to farming after losing our family land. Is he still with us? Evelyn asked gently. Marcus shook his head. He passed away 10 years ago, heart attack. He was working late at the school, even though I'd been trying to get him to retire for years. He sounds like a proud man, Robert commented. He was, Marcus agreed, too proud to accept help sometimes, even from his own son. That's a trait many of us share, Robert said meaningfully, especially those of us who had to fight for everything we got. Marcus nodded, understanding the connection. I wish he could have seen what technology can do for farming now, the tools that might have saved our family land back then. Maybe that's why you built them, David suggested quietly. The next morning, David drove Marcus back to his stranded Mercedes. As promised, he had picked up the necessary parts from a local auto supply store. Working efficiently, he replaced the water pump and radiator hose while Marcus watched. You really do know engines, Marcus commented, impressed by David's skill. My grandfather taught me the basics when I was 10, David explained, his hands moving confidently among the complex components. Said a farmer needs to know how to fix his own equipment. Later, I just applied the same systems thinking I learned at MIT. Machines are machines, whether they're tractors or computers. When the repair was complete, David closed the hood and wiped his hands on a rag. That should get you back to Atlanta without any problems, but you might want to have your regular mechanic take a look when you get home, just to be safe. Marcus extended his hand. Thank you, David, for the repair and for everything else. David shook his hand firmly. Good luck with Horizon. I'm looking forward to working together. Me too, Marcus replied sincerely. Before leaving, Marcus drove back to the Wilson farmhouse to say goodbye to Robert. He found the older man on the front porch, coffee mug in hand, looking out over his land in the morning light. Heading back to the city? Robert asked as Marcus joined him. Yes, David fixed my car good as new, Robert nodded. He's always had a gift for fixing broken things. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching a flock of birds rise from a distant field. I want to thank you, Marcus said finally, not just for your hospitality, but for the lesson you taught me yesterday. And what lesson was that? Robert asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. That I'd forgotten where I came from, Marcus admitted. My father worked his whole life cleaning up after other people so I could have opportunities he never did. Somewhere along the way, I started looking down on people who work with their hands, the very kind of work that gave me my chance. Robert sipped his coffee thoughtfully. It's easy to forget our roots when we're reaching for the sky. I won't make that mistake again, Marcus promised. See that you don't, Robert said firmly. Then with a softer expression, he added, and bring that fancy software of yours back here when it's ready for real-world testing. My son seems to think it might actually be useful. It will be, Marcus assured him. Especially with your input. As Marcus drove back toward Atlanta, the rural landscape gradually giving way to suburbs, and then the city skyline, he found himself thinking about the unexpected journey of the past 24 hours. What had begun as a car breakdown and an embarrassing display of prejudice had transformed into a powerful reminder of where he came from and why he had started Horizon Technologies in the first place. The partnership with Wilson Farms wouldn't just secure his company's financial future. It would reconnect him with the mission he had originally set out to accomplish. His father had lost a farm because he lacked the tools and information to save it. Now Marcus would help create those tools for a new generation of farmers, including the Wilsons. As he pulled into his reserved parking space at Horizon's headquarters, Marcus noticed something he had overlooked for years: the company's logo, a stylized Horizon line with a small farmhouse silhouette beneath it. It had been his father's suggestion when the company was first founded, a subtle reminder of the family history that had inspired it all. Marcus touched the logo gently before heading inside, a renewed sense of purpose in his step. Sometimes, he reflected, you have to break down on a dusty road to remember the path you were meant to follow. Now, back to where we started. The standoff between Marcus Washington, David Wilson, and Robert Wilson on that country road had been a moment of crisis, but also the beginning of transformation. What could have ended as nothing more than an unpleasant encounter between strangers became the catalyst for a partnership that would change all their lives. The next day, when the official partnership agreement was signed in Horizon's boardroom, Robert Wilson wore his usual work clothes, clean but well-worn. David had dressed more formally, but still maintained his practical, unpretentious style. Marcus, though impeccably dressed as always, greeted them with genuine warmth and respect that his employees had rarely seen him display. "Gentlemen," Marcus said as they finalized the agreement, "I believe this is the beginning of something important not just for our companies, but for the future of farming." Robert nodded, his weathered hand steady as he signed his name. "From broken-down cars to million-dollar deals, funny how life works sometimes." "Indeed it is," Marcus agreed, remembering his initial condescension with a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude for the lesson learned. "Indeed it is. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.